What is up, guys? Stu here. Took a small detour there to film some reviews for films which are just on general release in the cinema in the UK, which I actually forgot was a thing for a short while there, but we're now back to some London Film Festival reviews. This one for a film I've been incredibly interested by for a long time. That one is The Killing of a Sacred Deer, the new film from Yorgos Lanthimos. Let's talk about that shit. The Killing of a Sacred Deer, as I said, it's directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, the guy who directed The Lobster a couple of years back, which was an odd film. Like, dictionary definition of odd. Like, if you took a dictionary, you open it up, you search for odd, it would just be the poster for The Lobster. But good odd. Worth pointing out. I love that film. And in this one, he continues his trend of diving into the odd rabbit hole with this story of a surgeon who welcomes this teenager into his life, sort of takes him under the wing, and then it turns out to be a little bit more sinister than you think, and stuff starts spiraling, and then it starts spiraling a little bit more, and it just all goes to shit a little bit, which is, actually thinking about it, probably the best way to describe the plot of this film. It might sound like I'm vague here, but really it's just sort of shit hitting the fan, the movie. And I gotta say, in The Killing of a Sacred Deer, he's kind of done it again. It's one of the most unique films I've seen this year, and it will not leave my head. But again, this one stars Colin Farrell as the lead surgeon in a film. Colin Farrell's rad here. He's really, really great. At this point, he seems absolutely at home with Yorgos's very clearly defined kind of sense of tone and humour. It's very dry, very kind of deadpan, and yeah, Colin Farrell delivers it all as best as he ever has here. But alongside him in the film is Nicole Kidman, who continues her trend of being really fucking rad and making me deeply ashamed that I ever doubted her. Seriously, she's doing a great job of picking great roles across the board here. This one was very odd from her, but I really, really enjoyed her in the film. She works fantastically alongside Colin Farrell, and as I said, the deadpan delivery of all of the lines in here, the two of them smash that side of things. But surprisingly, the biggest highlight for me in the film were the child performances from the actors playing the kids in this film. And that's because it's difficult to get good child performances in like a normal film, but then you've got Yorgos Lanthimos' particular style of deadpan delivery, the dryness of it all. It's very odd, and it's a very particular style, and it's not something that I'd expect child actors to get a full grip on and grasp on compared to the adult actors who understand it a little bit more. That sounds very belittling, but I don't know, I just think that's the case here. But they absolutely smashed it. It's crazy the way they deliver all of these lines with such perfect comic timing, and the way that all their performances are suitably dark and twisted. It's incredibly impressive. I didn't expect to see performances like this from child actors. They are some of the best child performances of the year. The standout there being Barry Keoghan, the kid from Dunkirk, who is fantastic. He's really, really impressive in this film. He essentially carries most of this film. It might look at the surface like it's Colin Farrell's film, but really, he does carry most of the film. He's one of the most entertaining, interesting characters to watch on screen here. I thought he smashed it out of the park there. But the film that they all find themselves in here is incredibly dark, twisted, but also funny. It's just one of the most unique films I've seen all year, and that is something that I was saying about The Lobster when it came out. So Yorgos Lanthimos has really honed in on his style here, and it's absolutely as effective as ever here. Firstly, that kind of deadpan delivery of all the absurd things that are happening in this film works spectacularly. I don't think it's going to work for everyone. If you weren't a fan of it in The Lobster, you're not going to watch this one and be like, oh, I suddenly get it. This is amazing. But I, for one, absolutely love that style. And the story in this one is much darker than we saw in The Lobster. I feel like The Lobster had a dark kind of undertone to it, but it did feel like this weird, quirky, comedic idea behind it. Whereas this one is just a little bit more like, it's fucked. And it's just building. The whole film is building and creating this incredibly unnerving sense of unease in everything about it until it finally peaks and you're just left like, fuck. And that idea of sort of building and slowly twisting to this crescendo is something that carries through in the cinematography. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous film to look at. But it's filled with these sort of slow, creeping shots, and most of the shots are slightly off in some sense. They're framed in a very unconventional way, which doesn't feel too unconventional to be like, oh, what is actually happening here? But just adds this slight sense that something's off here. And it's that kind of off but not being able to quite pin what's off about it that works so well about his direction here and carries throughout the entire film. It has this way of making you laugh at things that are obviously absurd, but in the world of the film, it isn't anything funny happening. So you'll find yourself doing that thing where you're laughing at something and then it suddenly dawns on you that that is actually not, it's not funny in the world of the film. It's dark. There's a point in pretty much every scene of this film where you do that laugh and it goes like this. And I also love, from the writing side of things, the way that this film unfolds its mystery. I mean, it isn't particularly concerned with being a mystery film where it's like, oh, what's happening? Let's give you some good old answers here. Yay, fun times. Because it definitely absolutely relishes in the surreal nature of what the fuck's happening in this film. But I enjoyed the way that it starts to layer on the storyline. So at first it seems, well, relatively normal, if you want to call anything that happens in a Yorgos Lanthimos film normal. And then it starts to layer in these things which are very weird. And you're very interested in what's happening. But I'm not even sure I wanted to know what's happening. It's that dark. And that leads to probably the scene that I was the most nervous in for the entire year in any film. I didn't know I was capable of feeling that nervous. I was sort of, my heart was beating and I was like, oh man, oh man, I just want this to be over. And it's weird because for the first half of this film, with the very kind of detached, deadpan nature of Lanthimos' screenplay and direction, I wasn't necessarily aware that I was getting on board with these characters or really caring for them in that sense. I was distracted sort of by the comedy and the dark style and just the twistedness of it all, that I didn't really appreciate how much I was caring about these characters until shit hit the fan. I was like, I'm really on board with you now. I don't want any of this bad shit to happen. But there's this really interesting ability to thread through this tone and style which feels incredibly abnormal. But then you end up getting sort of the same results out of it as you would from a usual way of storytelling it. There's a risk that when you go for a tone this obviously weird, like, you know, people don't talk and act like this in real life where we are today, that you get very detached from the characters and you just don't really care about shit. It's just people being odd. But that's absolutely not the case here. You get to the second half of this film and I am on board with how these characters live. I understand why they work and how they act in this world. It feels like a living, breathing world, even though it's so far off how the actual living, breathing world works. I will say, however, though, that out of that does stem probably my only big problem with the film. And I don't necessarily think it's a problem, but it's something that stops me from wholeheartedly 100% adoring it on my first viewing. And it was the same case with The Lobster, but with that kind of detached tone, at least for the first half of this film, there's something stopping me fully connecting with these characters. But then at the same time, it's not a film which asks you to really connect with these characters. It's only interested in showing this very abstract idea of morality in a very surreal way. It's crazy. But I think, much like The Lobster, it's going to take a few more viewings to fully soak it in and understand it, and I could definitely, absolutely see this rating going up. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and give The Killing of a Sacred Deer the absolute highest 4 stars I can give it. I thought about giving it a 5 stars, so no, it's sort of in the limbo between 4 and 5 stars. Go and see it. It's crazy. You won't regret it. But what about you guys? Have you seen The Killing of a Sacred Deer yet? It's out over here in the UK tomorrow. It has been out in the US on limited release for a while now. Let me know what you thought about it if you have seen it. I'm interested because I could see a lot of people being like, hold on, what the fuck? What? Let me know wherever you stand on it in the comments below. I'd love to know. And as usual, if you like this review and you want to see me talk about more shit, please consider clicking subscribe. But until next time, stay beautiful, mother truckers. Disney's Moana. I'm back again. Moving to the side. Here's a playlist of all the films I saw at the London Film Festival at the moment. There are reviews coming in steadily in there. Click on that. Check out any films you want to see my thoughts on, and then let me know what you thought on the films. Am I doing this right?